Cowboy, you can't choose just one. By ancient law, you must marry all sisters. Jack Thompson was not like most men in his town. He had grown up riding horses, working on farms, and learning the ways of the open plains. But Jack had always felt a restless pull inside him, a need to explore beyond the familiar fields and dusty roads of his childhood. He had heard stories from travelers passing through about strange lands and unique customs, and the idea of seeing the world beyond his little hometown thrilled him. So when he finally reached an age where he could make his own decisions, Jack packed his bag, saddled his horse, and set off toward the unknown. After weeks of travel across wide, rolling plains and rugged mountains, Jack arrived at a village tucked away between two gentle hills. The village was unlike anything he had ever seen. Small clay houses with thatched roofs dotted the landscape, smoke curling lazily from chimneys. Children ran barefoot along the paths, laughing and chasing each other, while women carried baskets of fresh vegetables and fruits, chatting softly as they walked. Men mended fishing nets by the river or worked on fields, their faces sunburned but smiling. Everything about the village had a calm, almost magical energy, and Jack felt immediately curious. When Jack entered the village square, people stopped and stared. His worn cowboy hat, dusty boots, and foreign accent made him stand out. A kind-looking elderly man with deep wrinkles approached him. "You are not from here," the man said, smiling kindly. "Who are you and what brings you to our village?" "I am Jack," he replied. "I am a traveler looking for work and adventure. I've heard tales of your village and wanted to see it for myself." The man nodded, seemingly satisfied. "You have come at an interesting time. There is a family here whose story is unusual even by our standards. Perhaps you will find your curiosity tested." Jack's ears perked up. "Unusual? How so?" The elder's eyes twinkled. "You see, in our village, an ancient law says that if a man wishes to marry, he cannot choose only one sister in a family. He must marry all the sisters. It is a rule that has been in place for generations, and it ensures the family remains united. If you are willing, you may meet them." Jack blinked. He had heard of strange customs during his travels, but this was unlike anything he had imagined. He had always thought marriage was about love between two people. The idea of marrying multiple sisters at once seemed almost impossible. Yet, there was something in the elder's tone that made him pause. This law was not meant to hurt anyone. It was about family, about unity, about protecting bonds that had lasted centuries. Somehow, he felt drawn to it, as if understanding this law could teach him more about life than he had ever known. The elder led Jack down a narrow, winding path lined with flowers and fruit trees. Birds sang from the branches above, and the air smelled sweet with the scent of ripening fruit. Soon, they arrived at a modest house at the edge of the village. 3 young women were sitting on a wooden bench outside, spinning thread and chatting quietly. When they noticed Jack, they looked up. Their eyes were curious yet cautious. The first sister, Leela, had long, dark hair that glimmered in the sunlight. Her eyes were sharp, full of energy and curiosity. She looked at Jack directly, as if trying to see the person he truly was beneath his dusty clothes. The second sister, Clara, was quieter. She had soft features and a gentle smile. Her eyes seemed to hold a depth of thought, and when she spoke, her voice was calm and careful, choosing words with care. The third sister, Sophia, had a bright, cheerful personality. She laughed easily, and her movements were lively, almost playful. She tilted her head at Jack, studying him with amusement. Jack felt a mix of nervousness and awe. Meeting just one person who could captivate him was easy. Meeting 3 was overwhelming. Yet he reminded himself to be respectful. This was a family bound by a law older than he could imagine, and he did not want to offend anyone. "Hello," he said softly. "My name is Jack. I am new here, and I've heard of your family and your story. I wanted to meet you." Leela raised an eyebrow. "You know about our law?" she asked, her voice curious but not unkind. Jack nodded. "I've heard whispers from travelers. It is unusual from where I come from, but I want to understand. I don't wish to disrespect your family or your customs." Clara smiled faintly. "Understanding takes time," she said gently. "This is not just about rules. It is about trust, respect, and knowing each other. You cannot rush it." Sophia giggled. "Don't worry," she said playfully. "If you survive meeting all 3 of us, you might even enjoy it." Jack laughed nervously, feeling a strange warmth in their presence. He had expected to feel confused or out of place, but instead, he felt curious and alive. There was something about this family, their bond, and their laughter that made him want to stay and learn more. Over the next few days, Jack spent time in the village. He helped with daily chores, learning about farming, cooking, and caring for animals. The sisters often watched him from a distance, sometimes joining in, sometimes observing quietly. Jack began to notice the little things about them. The way Leela's eyes sparkled when she was excited, the thoughtful pauses in Clara's speech, the infectious laughter of Sophia that could brighten the dullest day. At night, sitting by the fire in the elder's home, Jack reflected on the law he had heard about. From his perspective, it seemed strange and almost impossible to follow. But from the villagers' perspective, it made perfect sense. Marrying all sisters ensured that no one family was torn apart, that bonds were maintained, and that the children of the family grew up in harmony. It was a law that promoted unity and balance, even if it clashed with what he had always believed. Jack realized that his journey to this village was about more than adventure. It was a lesson in respecting differences, embracing the unknown, and learning from traditions that had survived generations. He felt a growing sense of responsibility, not just to the sisters he had met, but to the culture he was slowly beginning to understand. As he walked through the village one evening, watching children play and families share meals together, Jack understood that life was more complex than the simple world he had known. Love, respect, and commitment were not always about choice. Sometimes they were about understanding the needs of others and the wisdom of those who had come before. Jack knew his life would never be the same. He had arrived as a curious cowboy, seeking adventure and work. But he stayed because he wanted to understand, to connect, and perhaps, to become part of something greater than himself. The village had welcomed him cautiously. The sisters had intrigued him, and the law that had once seemed strange now felt like a doorway to a deeper understanding of life. And so, with a mixture of nervousness, excitement, and curiosity, Jack prepared himself for what was to come. The challenge of meeting the sisters more closely, learning their ways, and navigating a law that tested not just his courage, but his heart. The story of Jack Thompson in this distant village was only beginning, and the adventures, lessons, and emotions that awaited him promised to change him forever. Jack's first days in the village had been full of curiosity and small discoveries, but meeting the sisters up close was something entirely different. Each morning, he would rise with the sun, helping the villagers with their chores and learning about their ways. But his mind often wandered to the three sisters who had intrigued him so much. He wondered about their daily lives, their dreams, and what it would truly mean to understand them in a village bound by such an unusual law. The day began quietly, with birds singing in the trees and the faint smell of bread baking from nearby homes. Jack walked toward the sisters' house, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. Today, he would spend more time with them, not just observing from afar, but learning about who they were as individuals. Leela was the first to greet him. She was sitting outside, repairing a basket with remarkable skill. Her hands moved quickly and confidently, weaving and twisting the strands as if they were second nature to her. When she saw Jack approaching, she looked up with a half-smile, half-challenge in her eyes. "You're back," she said, her voice carrying both curiosity and amusement. "I hope you are ready to work today." Jack laughed softly. "I am ready for anything, I just hope I don't make a fool of myself." Leela's laughter was quick and musical. "You might," she said teasingly, "but that would make it more interesting." As they worked together, Jack noticed how energetic Leela was. She moved with purpose, always looking for ways to improve what she was doing. Her sharp eyes seemed to notice everything, and she asked him questions about his life and experiences. Jack, in turn, shared stories of the wide plains, the adventures he had on horseback, and the lessons he had learned from his parents. The conversation flowed naturally, and Jack felt himself drawn to her courage and straightforwardness. Leela's energy was contagious, and by the time they finished the work, he felt a sense of accomplishment and a growing admiration for her spirit. Next, Jack spent time with Clara. She was quieter, often sitting under a tree with a notebook in her lap, sketching the village or writing down observations about nature. Clara had a calm and thoughtful presence, and Jack found her to be incredibly wise for her age. While Leela had tested his courage, Clara tested his mind. "Why do you travel so far from home?" Clara asked softly as they walked along the riverbank. Her eyes held a quiet intensity that made Jack pause. "I suppose I am searching for something I can't name," Jack admitted. I want to see the world, understand it, and perhaps find a place where I belong. Clara nodded thoughtfully. Some people never truly find what they are looking for, she said. But sometimes, the journey itself teaches you more than the destination ever could. Her words stayed with him. He realized that Clara was not only observant but also deeply reflective. Conversations with her were calm yet profound, and Jack found himself thinking more carefully about his own actions and thoughts. Clara had a way of asking questions that made him think deeply, without ever making him feel judged. Over the next few hours, they shared stories of childhood, of hopes and dreams, and of fears that were rarely spoken aloud. Jack began to understand that Clara's wisdom came from patience and observation, and he respected that deeply. Finally, Jack met Sophia. She was always full of laughter and playful energy, a contrast to her sister's more serious demeanors. Sophia had a way of making Jack feel comfortable, even when he was nervous. She challenged him in small, unexpected ways, often through jokes or light-hearted competitions. "Bet you can't catch me," she said one morning, dashing across the field with a basket of apples in her hand. Jack laughed, chasing after her. He stumbled a few times, getting dirt on his clothes, but Sophia's laughter made it all worth it. "You are faster than you look," she said, tossing an apple to him. Through her playful nature, Jack discovered a different side of the sisters' family life. Sophia reminded him of the joy in simple moments, the importance of laughter, and the value of connecting with others through lightheartedness. She taught him that strength and resilience were not always serious. Sometimes they came through humor and positivity. Over the following days, Jack began to understand the unique bond between the sisters. They cared for each other deeply, supporting one another and speaking in ways that were sometimes playful, sometimes serious, but always connected. He saw how they complemented each other. Leela with courage and energy, Clara with thoughtfulness and wisdom, and Sophia with humor and warmth. Understanding one sister was not enough. He realized that the law of the village, strange as it seemed, reflected the reality of their lives. To truly belong to their family, he would have to respect and connect with all three. Jack also began to see how the villagers viewed him. They observed his interactions with the sisters carefully, noting his respect, kindness, and willingness to learn. Some elders spoke quietly among themselves, impressed that a stranger could approach such a delicate situation with patience. Jack knew that he was not only learning about the sisters, but also about the broader culture, how respect, patience, and understanding were valued above all else. As Jack spent more time with the sisters, he faced challenges he had not anticipated. Leela's energy sometimes overwhelmed him, Clara's questions sometimes made him doubt himself, and Sophia's playful tests often left him frustrated and confused. But through each challenge, he learned something new, about patience, about listening, about empathy, and about balancing his own feelings with the needs of others. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, painting the sky with shades of pink and gold, Jack sat with all three sisters by the river. They shared stories, laughter, and quiet moments of reflection. Jack realized that he was beginning to care deeply for each of them, not just as individuals, but as a family unit. He understood that this connection was unique and rare, something he had never experienced before. "You are different from anyone I have met," Leela said, breaking the silence. Her eyes were full of curiosity and warmth. "You are not afraid to be honest, even when the truth is difficult," Clara nodded. "And you listen, really listen, that is rare." Sophia added with a smile that could light up the darkest night, "And you make us laugh, even when you don't mean to." Jack felt a warmth in his chest. He knew that his journey had led him to something extraordinary. These sisters, with their unique personalities and deep bonds, had changed the way he saw the world. He began to understand that love was not simple, and family was not just about blood. It was about connection, respect, and care for one another. As night fell and stars appeared in the clear sky, Jack realized that he was no longer an outsider. The village had accepted him, the sisters had opened their hearts to him, and he had learned the first lessons of patience, understanding, and respect. He knew that the days ahead would bring more challenges, more tests, and deeper connections. But he also knew that he was ready to face them, not just as a visitor, but as someone willing to learn, grow, and honor the bonds that had been created long before he arrived. Jack lay awake that night, thinking about the day he had spent with the sisters. He replayed their laughter, their questions, and their guidance. He realized that the journey he had started to find adventure and excitement had transformed into something far greater. A journey of understanding, respect, and the beginning of meaningful relationships. He knew that the next steps would be difficult, but he also understood that with patience, kindness, and an open heart, he could navigate the challenges and discover a deeper sense of belonging than he had ever imagined. The quiet village night surrounded him with the soft sounds of nature, the rustle of leaves, the distant calls of night birds, and the gentle flow of the river. In that moment, Jack felt a sense of peace. He was beginning to see that life was not just about choice or freedom, but about understanding, commitment, and the courage to embrace something unfamiliar. The sisters had shown him the first glimpse of a world where love, family, and tradition were intertwined, and he knew that the path ahead would require strength, patience, and an open heart. Jack's journey had only just begun, but he could already feel the threads of connection forming. Each sister had touched him in a different way, teaching him lessons about courage, thoughtfulness, and joy. And as he closed his eyes, he whispered a silent promise to himself. He would honor this journey, respect the family, and face whatever challenges came with courage, patience, and an open heart. The days ahead promised adventure, laughter, challenges, and lessons. Lessons that would shape Jack's life forever. And he was ready to face them, step by step, heart open, and mind willing to learn. Jack's time with the sisters had been full of learning, laughter, and quiet reflection, but the true test of his journey was only beginning. The law of the village was clear. To become part of this family, he could not favor one sister over the others. He had to earn the respect, trust, and affection of all three. That meant he would face challenges and tests, each designed to measure not only his character, but also his ability to understand and adapt to their ways. The first challenge came from Leela. One morning, she announced that they would go to the hills to gather firewood and check on the grazing animals. Jack had expected ordinary tasks, but Leela had a mischievous glint in her eye, and he soon realized that she was testing his courage. The hills were steep, and the path was narrow and rocky. A sudden gust of wind shook the trees, sending leaves swirling in the air. Jack had to keep his balance, navigating the uneven ground while carrying bundles of firewood. Leela moved confidently beside him, her laughter ringing out every time he stumbled. "Come on, Jack, you can do better than that," she called, her voice challenging. Jack gritted his teeth and focused. He was not going to fail this test, no matter how difficult it seemed. Step by step, he climbed higher, learning to anticipate the slippery stones and shifting ground. Leela watched carefully, occasionally pointing out safer paths but never taking over his work. By the time they reached the top of the hill, Jack was exhausted but triumphant. Leela clapped him on the shoulder and smiled. "You see," she said, "courage is not just about fear, it's about persistence and learning from every step. You have it, Jack, even if it scares you sometimes." Jack felt a deep respect for Leela. Her test was not cruel. It was a lesson in perseverance, courage, and trust. He began to understand that she valued strength of character as much as bravery, and that to be accepted, he needed to rise to challenges with determination and honesty. After the physical test, Clara decided to measure Jack's patience and intellect. She invited him to the village library, a small room filled with scrolls, books, and carefully written records. Her challenge was quiet but demanding, to organize the records of the village's harvests, trade, and important events. At first, the task seemed simple, but as he worked, Jack realized it required meticulous attention to detail, concentration, and careful reasoning. Clara observed silently, occasionally asking questions. "Why do you think this record is important?" she asked one afternoon. Jack hesitated, thinking carefully. "Because it shows how the village has grown and adapted over time," he replied. "It tells a story of patience, planning, and cooperation." Clara smiled faintly. "Exactly. Knowledge is not just about information. It is about understanding the story behind it, the lessons we can learn, and how we can use it to make better choices." Hours passed as Jack organized scrolls, recorded observations, and answered Clara's questions. He began to notice patterns, understand the history of the village, and appreciate the importance of learning from the past. By the end of the day, Clara nodded in approval. "You have patience," she said softly. "And more importantly, you can think carefully before acting. That is a rare quality, Jack. It shows that you respect not only knowledge but the people who preserve it." Jack felt proud, not because he had completed the task, but because he had gained a deeper understanding of the village, its history, and the wisdom that Clara represented. Her challenge taught him that intelligence and patience were as important as courage and strength. Sophia's test was entirely different. It was playful, unpredictable, and full of laughter, but no less important. One afternoon, she led Jack to the village marketplace and told him he had to complete a series of small, amusing tasks to earn her approval. He had to balance a basket of eggs while navigating a crowded street, carry water from the well without spilling a drop, and even participate in a small dance with the children of the village. At first, Jack felt frustrated. These tasks seemed trivial compared to the physical and mental challenges he had faced. But Sophia's laughter was infectious, and soon he found himself enjoying the moments. He learned to approach problems with creativity and a light heart. Each misstep was met with encouragement and giggles, not criticism. "You see, Jack," Sophia said as they finished the tasks, "life is not always serious. Sometimes the way you handle joy, laughter, and unexpected challenges says more about you than the toughest test. You are learning to live fully, even in small moments." Through these tests, Jack began to notice a pattern. Each sister valued a different quality: Leela's courage, Clara's thoughtfulness, and Sophia's joy. He realized that understanding them meant more than completing tasks. It meant appreciating their strengths, respecting their differences, and learning to balance his own instincts with the needs of each sister. The villagers, too, watched carefully. They noticed Jack's respect, his willingness to learn, and his determination to rise to each challenge. Slowly, whispers of approval spread through the community. Jack was no longer seen as just a foreign cowboy. He was becoming someone who could honor the traditions, values, and hearts of the sisters. However, the challenges were not always easy. There were moments when Jack felt overwhelmed, unsure if he could meet the expectations of all three sisters. Leela would push him to take risks that scared him, Clara would ask questions that left him questioning his own decisions, and Sophia would create situations that tested his patience and humor. At times, he wanted to give up, feeling that it was impossible to satisfy everyone. But with each challenge, he remembered the lessons he had learned in the village, the importance of patience, respect, and understanding. He realized that these trials were not meant to defeat him, but to help him grow. Each sister was teaching him something essential about life, love, and human connection. One evening, after a particularly challenging day, Jack sat quietly by the river, reflecting on the experiences he had faced. The sun dipped behind the hills, casting long shadows across the water. He thought about Leela's courage, Clara's wisdom, and Sophia's joy. He realized that he had grown stronger, wiser, and more patient in just a few weeks. These lessons were not just about the sisters. They were about himself and the kind of man he wanted to become. The next day, he approached the sisters with a renewed sense of determination. "I may not always get everything right," he said, "but I want to learn from you and honor your family, your law, and your trust." Leela smiled, seeing the sincerity in his eyes. "That is all we ask, Jack." "Courage is not just about facing danger. It is about facing yourself and your doubts," Clara nodded. "And learning from mistakes is as important as celebrating successes. You are doing both, and that shows your character." Sophia laughed and clapped him on the back. "And don't forget to enjoy the journey. Life is too short to be serious all the time." Jack felt a warmth in his heart. The challenges had tested him in ways he had never imagined, but he now understood that they were not punishments. They were opportunities to grow, to learn, and to connect with the sisters in a meaningful way. Over the following weeks, Jack faced more tests, each tailored to the strengths of the sisters and the needs of the village. He learned to work efficiently, to communicate clearly, and to balance his own desires with the expectations of the family. Slowly, he began to feel a true sense of belonging, not because he had completed tasks, but because he had embraced the lessons they offered with honesty and respect. Through laughter, effort, and reflection, Jack realized that the law of the village was not about control or restriction. It was about understanding, harmony, and balance. Marrying all sisters was not simply a rule to follow. It was a journey to learn the meaning of connection, respect, and shared responsibility. By the time the seasons began to shift, Jack had transformed from a curious outsider into someone who was deeply woven into the fabric of the sisters' lives. The villagers began to accept him fully, not as a visitor, but as someone who had proven himself through courage, patience, and understanding. And for the first time in his life, Jack felt a sense of peace, a feeling that he was exactly where he was meant to be, learning, growing, and connecting in ways he had never imagined. The trials he had faced with the sisters had not been easy, but they had shaped him into a better man, someone capable of love, empathy, and respect. He now understood that life was not about choosing the easiest path, but about embracing challenges, learning from others, and growing through experiences that tested the heart as much as the mind. Jack knew that more challenges awaited him, but he was ready. He had gained the courage to face danger, the patience to reflect and learn, and the joy to embrace life's lighter moments. Most importantly, he had learned to respect the sisters not as objects of affection, but as individuals with strength, wisdom, and heart. And in that understanding, Jack felt the first true sense of belonging he had ever experienced. He was no longer just a traveler in a strange village. He was part of a family, part of a tradition, and part of a story that was larger than himself. The tests had not only taught him about the sisters, they had taught him about life, love, and the courage to face the unknown. After weeks of challenges, tests, and small victories, Jack began to feel a change within himself. He no longer approached each day in the village as a mere visitor or an outsider. Instead, he started seeing himself as part of the sisters' lives, a participant in their world, and a student of the traditions that had shaped them. The lessons of courage, patience, and joy were no longer abstract ideas. They were living, breathing parts of his daily life. The morning sun rose gently over the hills, casting golden light on the village. Jack woke early, feeling a mixture of excitement and calm. Today, he thought, would be different. It was the first day he would try not just to meet the expectations of the sisters, but to truly understand and connect with them on a deeper level. He had grown close to Leela, Clara, and Sophia individually, but now he wanted to embrace all three as a single, intertwined family. Jack began the day with Leela. She had a determined look on her face, and Jack could tell she had something important planned. "Today," she said, "we are going to the forest to check the new grazing area for the animals. You need to be alert, careful, and ready to act quickly." Jack nodded, recalling all he had learned about courage and persistence. The forest was dense, with winding paths and thick underbrush. Every step required attention, balance, and confidence. Leela led the way with energy and focus, but unlike before, Jack noticed that he was no longer intimidated. He moved alongside her, predicting the uneven paths, listening to the sounds of the forest, and helping guide the animals safely. At one point, a sudden movement in the bushes startled him. A small deer bounded out, and the herd scattered slightly. Jack's quick thinking helped calm the animals and guide them back on course. Leela watched with admiration. "You are learning quickly," she said, smiling. "You are brave but also smart. Courage without thought is reckless. You have learned both." After the work in the forest, Jack spent time with Clara. She invited him to her little study room where she kept books, records, and scrolls. Today, her challenge was different. It was about understanding relationships and emotions. Clara had asked Jack to help organize stories of the villagers' families and their history, but with a focus on lessons learned and values preserved. Jack carefully read each story, noting the hardships, celebrations, and choices of the villagers. He reflected on how the decisions of one generation affected the next, how love and respect were passed down through actions, and how mistakes became lessons for the future. Clara observed silently, occasionally guiding him with thoughtful questions. "What does this story teach you about patience?" she asked, pointing to a tale of a family who had worked together to rebuild their home after a storm. Jack thought carefully. "It shows that patience is not just waiting," he said. "It is working steadily, supporting each other, and believing that effort and care can overcome difficulties. It is about understanding the value of teamwork and trust." Clara nodded, a small smile forming. "Exactly. Patience is a kind of love." "You are learning more than I expected, Jack. You are beginning to see not just the actions, but the meaning behind them." As the day progressed, Jack joined Sophia in the village square, where she was helping children learn to play traditional games. Today's lesson from Sophia was about joy, laughter, and the ability to connect with others through kindness. Jack participated in the games, laughed with the children, and even improvised some new challenges. Sophia watched with delight, her eyes twinkling. "You are learning to embrace life," she said, gently nudging him. It is not just about hard work, courage, or thinking carefully. It is about finding joy even in small moments. The ability to laugh, share, and bring happiness to others is just as important as any other skill. Jack realized that these lessons, while simple in appearance, were profound. Each sister offered a different perspective on life, and he had begun to see how all three fit together. Leela taught him courage, Clara taught him patience and thoughtfulness, and Sophia taught him joy. But the real lesson was in combining all three qualities, balancing strength, wisdom, and happiness to become a man capable of understanding, empathy, and care. That evening, the sisters invited Jack to sit with them outside their home. The sky was painted in shades of orange and purple, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of flowers from nearby gardens. They spoke openly, sharing stories, dreams, and reflections about life. For the first time, Jack felt that he was not just learning from them, but growing with them. "You have changed since you arrived," Leela said thoughtfully. "You are not the same cowboy who came here with curiosity in his eyes. You have learned to face challenges, respect our ways, and care for all of us equally. That is no small thing," Clara added, "and you have shown that understanding and patience can bridge differences. You respect not only us, but the traditions and the community that raised us." "That respect is what matters most," Sophia smiled warmly. "And you have learned to laugh with us, to share our happiness, and to make us feel joy even in hard times. You are learning to live fully, Jack, and that makes all the difference." Jack felt a warmth in his chest. For weeks, he had worried about whether he could meet the expectations of all three sisters. Now, he understood that it was not about perfection or following rules blindly. It was about honesty, respect, and willingness to grow together. Over the following days, Jack's connections with the sisters deepened. They shared meals, worked together on daily tasks, and supported each other in small ways. Leela would push him to take risks, Clara would engage him in deep conversations, and Sophia would keep his heart light with laughter and games. Each moment strengthened their bond, teaching Jack about trust, empathy, and the importance of being present in every interaction. Jack also began to understand the subtle ways the sisters interacted with each other. Leela's strength and courage often protected the family, Clara's wisdom guided decisions, and Sophia's humor kept spirits high. Together, they created a balance that made their family stronger and more resilient. Jack realized that to truly belong, he needed to honor not only each sister individually, but also the harmony between them. One afternoon, the sisters invited Jack to a small gathering with the village elders. They wanted to discuss the future, including how the traditions of the village could continue while embracing change. Jack listened carefully as the elders spoke, noting the respect they had for the sisters and their family. He understood that his role was not just personal. It was also about being part of a community, respecting history, and contributing positively. The sisters guided Jack gently through conversations, teaching him the values of diplomacy, empathy, and responsibility. Leela emphasized courage in leadership, Clara focused on thoughtful decision-making, and Sophia reminded everyone of the importance of kindness and joy. Jack realized that the lessons he had learned from them individually now applied to a larger context. He was learning to live not just for himself, but as part of a family and community. By the end of the week, Jack felt a profound sense of acceptance and belonging. The initial curiosity that had brought him to the village had transformed into respect, love, and understanding. He was no longer an outsider testing the boundaries of tradition. He was a participant in a shared story, a man who had embraced the law of the village with sincerity and an open heart. One evening, as the sun set and the village glowed in warm light, Jack sat with the sisters under the stars. He realized that he had come to understand the deeper meaning of the law, that marrying all sisters was not about obligation alone, but about learning, growing, and creating harmony. It was about embracing differences, respecting strengths, and supporting one another through life's challenges. Jack felt a quiet joy that he had never experienced before. He understood that true connection was not simple or easy, but it was rewarding in ways that went beyond personal desire. Leela, Clara, and Sophia had taught him lessons about courage, patience, and joy that would stay with him forever. And in return, Jack had shown them respect, care, and the willingness to embrace their lives fully. He looked at the sisters, feeling gratitude and warmth. "I have learned more from you than I could have imagined," he said softly. You have taught me about life, love, and the meaning of family. I want to honor everything I have learned with respect and care now and always." The sisters smiled, each in her own way, Leela with pride, Clara with quiet approval, and Sophia with warmth and laughter. They had watched Jack grow, struggle, and learn. And now they saw in him someone who could truly be part of their lives, not just as a husband, but as a partner who understood the meaning of connection, respect, and shared responsibility. As the night deepened, Jack realized that he had reached a turning point. He had not only faced challenges and tests, but he had embraced the lessons behind them. He had learned to respect the sisters as individuals and as a family unit, to value tradition and community, and to grow into a man capable of understanding, empathy, and care. Jack knew that the journey was far from over, but he felt a profound sense of peace. The next steps would bring new experiences, joys, and challenges, but now he was ready. He had learned to embrace not just the law of the village, but the heart of it, connection, understanding, and harmony. And with that, he felt truly at home, surrounded by sisters who had become family, and a village that had welcomed him with trust and respect. The days had passed, and Jack Thompson had grown into a part of the village in ways he had never imagined. What had begun as curiosity and adventure had transformed into a deep sense of belonging, respect, and love. He no longer saw the sisters as challenges to be met, but as three remarkable women whose lives, strengths, and hearts had shaped him into a better man. The lessons he had learned from them, courage from Leela, patience from Clara, and joy from Sophia, had become part of who he was. As the sun rose over the village one morning, Jack awoke with a quiet determination. Today, he thought, would mark the beginning of a new chapter, not just in his life, but in the lives of the sisters and the family as a whole. The bond they shared had grown strong, tested through challenges, laughter, and shared work, and now it was time to embrace the harmony and understanding that had developed. Jack began his day with Leela. She was already outside, checking on the grazing animals with a confident and energetic stride. Jack joined her, carrying baskets and helping guide the livestock through the fields. The morning air was fresh, filled with birdsong and the earthy smell of grass and soil. As they worked, Leela glanced at him with a warm smile. "You've grown so much since you arrived," she said. "You've learned courage not just in facing challenges, but in facing yourself and your own fears. That is rare, Jack. Most people never reach that point." Jack nodded, feeling a sense of pride that was not about accomplishment, but about growth. "I've learned from all of you," he said. "Your lessons have shaped me, and I feel stronger because of them." After finishing with Leela, Jack joined Clara for a quiet walk through the village gardens. The flowers were in full bloom, their colors vibrant against the soft green of the grass. Clara spoke softly, leading Jack to reflect on his experiences and the lessons he had learned. "Understanding is the foundation of connection," she said. "You have shown patience, thoughtfulness, and care in everything you do. That is why you have grown close to all of us, not because of luck, but because of your heart and mind working together." Jack listened intently, realizing that Clara's words captured the essence of his journey. It was not about completing tasks or meeting expectations. It was about sincerity, respect, and willingness to learn. The trust he had built with Clara, Leela, and Sophia was genuine because it had been earned through honesty and care. Sophia, as usual, brought laughter and light to the day. She had arranged a small celebration in the village square, inviting neighbors and friends to join. Music, dancing, and cheerful chatter filled the air. Jack participated wholeheartedly, laughing, dancing, and sharing in the happiness of the moment. Sophia's eyes sparkled with delight as she watched him move with ease and joy, finally comfortable in the world he had entered. "You've learned to embrace life," she said, tapping his shoulder playfully. "You understand that happiness, like courage and patience, must be shared, and you've done it beautifully." By midday, the sisters invited Jack to sit with them under a large oak tree at the edge of the village. They spoke openly about the past weeks, reflecting on the journey that had brought them all together. Leela spoke first, recalling the early days when Jack had been unsure of his place in the family and the village. She praised his courage and willingness to face challenges with honesty. Clara followed, highlighting the moments of thoughtfulness and learning. She spoke of the patience Jack had shown, his respect for traditions, and his ability to understand the deeper meaning behind each task and lesson. Her words carried a quiet, profound approval that touched Jack deeply. Finally, Sophia laughed gently, recounting the playful moments the laughter shared and the joy Jack had brought into their lives. "You've learned to live fully," she said. "You've embraced not just the serious parts of life, but the happy ones too. That is the heart of understanding, knowing when to work, when to think, and when to simply enjoy life with those around you." Jack felt a swell of emotion. The journey had been long and challenging, but the reward was far greater than he could have imagined. He realized that the law of the village, which had seemed so strange at first, was not about obligation or control. It was about understanding, respect, and harmony. By embracing it fully, he had gained the trust, affection, and partnership of the sisters, and had become part of a family he now cherished deeply. Over the next few days, Jack, Leela, Clara, and Sophia worked together to strengthen both the family and the village. Jack helped with projects, guided by Leela's energy and courage, planned with Clara's wisdom, and infused with the joy Sophia encouraged. Villagers noticed the harmony and cooperation among them, seeing a rare example of balance, respect, and connection that inspired others in the community. Jack also spent time reflecting on the lessons he had learned individually from each sister and how they combined to create something greater than himself. Courage, patience, and joy were not separate qualities. They were interconnected. Understanding one without the others was incomplete. True growth, he realized, came from embracing all aspects of life, as represented by the sisters' personalities and strengths. One afternoon, Jack took a quiet walk alone through the fields near the village. He thought about the journey that had brought him here. The long travels, the initial confusion, the challenges and tests, and the moments of laughter and reflection. He realized that he had not only learned about the sisters and the village, but about himself, his own capacity for love, understanding, and adaptation. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for the lessons, the guidance, and the trust that had been placed in him. As evening fell, Jack returned to the sisters. They welcomed him with smiles and warmth, and together they watched the sunset paint the sky with shades of pink, orange, and gold. The moment was peaceful, reflective, and filled with a sense of completion. Jack realized that he had not simply survived the challenges. He had embraced them, learned from them, and grown because of them. The sisters, too, had changed. They had come to trust Jack fully, not because of a rule, but because of his sincerity, respect, and heart. Each sister had her own bond with him, yet they also shared a collective trust and affection that was strengthened by their unity. Jack had learned to respect not only each sister individually, but also the harmony between them, a harmony that reflected the deeper meaning of the village law. That night, as the stars twinkled above and the village settled into quiet, Jack felt a profound sense of peace. He knew that he had been part of something extraordinary, a journey that had challenged him, taught him, and transformed him. He had learned that love was not simple or singular, but complex, shared, and balanced. He had learned that family was more than blood, that connection required effort and understanding, and that true belonging came from respect, patience, and care. Jack looked at the sisters, seeing not just their beauty, but their strength, wisdom, and joy. He felt a deep commitment, not a burden, but a heartfelt promise, to honor the lessons he had learned, to continue growing with them, and to contribute to the harmony and happiness of their lives. The village, too, had embraced this harmony. Neighbors spoke of Jack with respect, seeing him as someone who had honored tradition while bringing sincerity, care, and balance. The sisters' family was stronger than ever, and the lessons Jack had learned would continue to guide him in the years to come. In the days that followed, Jack continued to live fully in the village, participating in daily life, sharing in work and laughter, and deepening his bonds with the sisters. The initial curiosity that had brought him there had transformed into a lifelong commitment to understanding, to growth, and to the beauty of shared love and family. Jack realized that the law, which had seemed strange at first, was a lesson in its own right. It was not about forcing a man to love more than one person, but about teaching him to respect, understand, and care for others deeply. It was about balance, harmony, and shared responsibility. And in embracing it, Jack had found not only the trust and love of the sisters, but a sense of purpose and belonging he had never known before. As the story of Jack Thompson in the village drew to a close, the message was clear. Life is a journey of understanding, growth, and connection. True love and respect are not about ease or simplicity. They are about courage, patience, and joy. And when these qualities are embraced together, They create harmony, unity, and a sense of fulfillment that lasts a lifetime. Jack sat under the stars with the sisters one final time that evening, feeling the warmth of their presence and the peace of a journey completed. He knew that challenges would come again, but he also knew that he had learned the most important lessons of all: to honor traditions, respect others, and embrace life fully with courage, thoughtfulness, and joy. And with that, Jack Thompson, the cowboy who had arrived seeking adventure, had found his home. Not just in a place, but in hearts, in family, and in a life enriched by understanding, connection, and love.